So Australia then to wrap up on Saturday, it's 3:10 kickoff. Australia beaten by Scotland 27-13. It's the 150th anniversary of the IRFU. There's a very nice special jersey for the occasion, which Andy Farrell was singing the praises of. Joe Schmidt's been talking about the occasion and his love for Ireland, and we still have a home over there and a daughter. I'm looking forward to catching up with her, actually, he said. Joseph Akuso-Suaalii injured his wrist. I think, Irish fans, but I think we'd all like to see him play, so hopefully he can make it. Eddie, you mentioned the defence. I was talking to Matt Williams as well. He was just off air. He was sort of saying 9 and 10 for Australia is still very, very workmanlike. They're grand, but everything else around them has improved massively. Now, he didn't mention that defence being catastrophe, as he said. So, shocking?
I think it's terrible, actually. I think it's one of the biggest Achilles heels at the moment. They've been doing this for a while. It's the softest drift defence I've seen in 20 years, where they don't even take the gain line. They just push sideways and they turn their bodies and chase the ball across the field. And they make tackles out wide, and they did turn Scotland over a couple of times where they held them up because Scotland latched on and drove them all on the wings. But by and large, you're giving up 10, 15 metres every time you carry. So the way to beat that defence is, and we used to do it to England in the noughties, is you go to the edges all the time, you run hard, you burn up 10 or 15 metres, you put the ball back, you go to the other wing, you burn up another 10 or 15 metres. And after 5 or 6 phases, they've given up like 50 or 60 metres and they haven't missed a tackle. But suddenly they're under 22. And that's, to me, it's a very dated defence. I mean, nobody that drift defends that soft as us. And they've been doing it all summer. And they've been porous on it. And then I think the worst thing on the weekend was against Scotland. The tackling was abysmal. I mean, the Tuipulotu try after the line-out was just embarrassing. Like, there was like saloon door tackles, Fuck your arm and the guy swings through it. And even for Josh Bayliss's try and Finn Russell's try, the tackling was abysmal as well. They just missed front-up tackles. And I just think they're very vulnerable while that defence is in situ. And I'm just surprised they haven't addressed it at all. It's a problem for them. They're averaging this autumn, they're coughing off 28 points a game. And that to me and that's even having only scored, or they've given up 37 against England. They only give 20. They've 20 against Wales, which would make sense because Wales are not that good. But 27 against Scotland, that's 84 points in 3 games. That's 28 points a game, which is not sustainable at Test level.
No.
Particularly when you're missing those tackles. Now, on the other side of the equation, though, their attack is actually very good. It's a really smart attack. They've got some big ball carriers in Vellatini, Skelton, Harry Wilson is a great workhorse, and Angus Bell is a beast. He's 127 kilos. And they do damage around the field in their carries. And then they're very snappy in their reloads. They've options front door, back door, and they can put really nice attacking sets together. And they will pick you apart. They scored 42 against England, 52 against Wales. And Scotland was a damn squib. They only got 14 points. But they are capable of it. And I just think they're that sort of team at the moment. Now, I do think that loss in Scotland has burst their bubble a bit. I think they were on a roll. Had they won in Scotland, they would have come to Dublin, cock a hoop. But I think that Scotland game has really knocked a lot of wind out of their sails. But it'll be interesting to see if it address their defensive flaws, and they are big flaws between the tackling and the soft drift defence. Ireland could kill them on the edges with that. And if their attack fires, Suaalii, I think it looks like he broke his wrist watching that tackle. And I know. I'm an expert, but I'm watching rugby long enough, so he went down straight away and grabbed his wrist, and that's not a good sign, and he was straight off. So he's an awful loss to them as well. He's another guy that was a game changer for them,
The way you describe that soft drift defence is very damning, really. I guess one of the proponents of it would talk about how well we've great line integrity and therefore we don't miss tackles. But the way you describe it doesn't sound amazing. I mean, the phrase Joe Schmidt and dated wouldn't be used all that often. There must be some logic there on his part. What would you think that might be?
I don't know, because to be honest with you, like it's so dated. They're playing so soft on the edges. If you look at them defending, and what you normally do with a drift defence is if they have 5 and you have 3, on the first pass you shift 1. Now it's a 4-on-3. The second pass you shift again. It's a 3-on-3. That's how drift defence is supposed to work. And you give up ground getting from the 5-on-3 to the 3-on-3. But once you lock on to the 3-on-3, you stiffen up the line, you come upfield, you knock someone's backside.
Okay.
But Scotland, against Scotland, they were just ushering Scotland up the outside channels. They were actually running sideways and backwards to chase the ball and giving up, loads of meters, like every carry.
Right.
And they got a couple of turnovers, but it's unsustainable at that level that you can give up, 40, 50 meters in the outside channels and keep yourself in the game. I just can't believe they're doing it. Just watch the video. It's just shocking to watch.
And even back in the day, once you got into that 3v3 position, even if you've been drifting to get there, once you got into that position, you'd come up a bit harder.
Oh, you come up like it with your hair on fire and knock them on his backside, because there's no overlap now. The line stiffens up and you come up and you knock people on their backside or drive them into touch where guys think they have a corner, and you use the touch line as your fourth defender, and you put him out of bounds and it's a turnover. But they're just defending so soft, it's unbelievable. And I don't know now that they doubled down them with just really bad tackle. I think they must have missed over 30 tackles up in Murrayfield.
Okay.
It was just shocking because the two Piloto try was embarrassing. You just look at it again. He ran between two defenders and they both put out their arms and ushered them in. But the Josh Bayless try and the Finn Russell tries again, very, very, very poor defense. Just not up to international standard. So the frustrating thing for them is that their attack is actually in very good nick, even though they didn't fire that well in Murrayfield. I just thought they had turned the corner attack wise and they've got a nice balance. And it suits Australian rugby. A mate of mine, he played scrum half for the US, Timmy Usa, said that the feeling in Australia is, if people watch it, they don't mind if Australia loses as long as they give it a crack. That's the term to say. And if they go out and play and they run at teams and they try and take teams through phases and they try and pick apart defences, that's what makes Australians happy, because they're having a crack. And they're doing that with the ball. That's my point, is they turn the corner attack wise, but you can't balance the books without defending.
That doesn't sound great.
No, although they did play quite soft. Sorry, New Zealand played very soft against Ireland in the World Cup quarter-final and were quite content to let Sexton pass it wide and they'd catch them in the edges, and it worked quite well for them. And you've got to remember that Joe Schmidt's sole really remit here is to have a team capable of beating an Andy Farrell team at the Lions next summer. And I would suspect he did this a few times with Ireland. Say his first window, he put everything into beating New Zealand in the final game, and he kind of sacked off a game against Australia the week before. And he would often, if they were playing an Italy or some other opponents, he would focus on the England game the week after. And you wouldn't hear about it until afterwards, but they'd actually do a big week of work on the game in 14 days' time. Publicly it was one game at a time and we're only focused on what's happening the weekend, but actually behind the scenes he would be investing heavily in the following week. And while a Grand Slam tour would have been lovely, I think Schmidt, it was never the primary goal of this tour. I think the main thing he wants to get out of this tour is obviously develop the team and get better, but also this Saturday is the one, because it is the dress rehearsal essentially. It's an Andy Farrell versus Joe Schmidt. Obviously personally it's a big one for him because he lived here and he retains great ties to the country. And I would say a lot of the work they've done over the last 2 weeks in particular, but even over the last window, has been building towards some sort of finale here in Dublin where they lay down a marker for the Lions series next year. And they would have probably kept some stuff back. I'm not saying the missed tackles are part of that, but if the players kind of got the sense that, this wasn't as important with a 6-day turnaround, maybe there's just an element of minding yourself. And I would suspect there's a plan coming this week. No one puts together a tailored game plan for an opposition better than Joe. No one knows Irish rugby outside of Ireland better than Joe. I'd say he has seen. I'm sure he saw Sam Prendergast play for Newbridge. I'm sure he was aware of him when he was 14 and 15. He is his fingerprints were all over that World Cup quarter final defeat. He will be coming with some sort of a plan. So while I don't dispute what Eddie said at all, I would imagine, just knowing Joe and having followed him for so long, that there is some method to what looks like madness, and that will. Whether they'll be the complete package this week, their whole aim is to be the big complete package next July, and they're getting closer to that. And he just didn't look in any way. I watched his press conference. He looked pretty chilled for a guy who just lost heavily in a game where they had history on the line. They lost the Grand Slam, but I don't think the Grand Slam was the aim. I think winning this Saturday was the aim.
Okay, interesting.
I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying about the Joe coming with a plan. There's no question about
Yeah.
There's been burning the midnight oil. He'd be going through Ireland's recent games frame by frame and looking for the slightest weakness. That's his MO as a coach. He's excellent at that.
Yeah.
And we've seen that when he was at Ireland, But I'm just looking at their overall defensive system,
Sure.
which hasn't shifted in recent games. I mean, they still coughed up 37 points against England. They got slaughtered by 60 points by Argentina, I think, so they have a penchant for defending very badly, and I think it does come out of their defensive system. To me, is an extraordinarily soft drift defense that nobody uses anymore because it's so dated. Now, it's not a zero-sum game. You can still work on your attack and smarten up your attack and put your power plays in that Joe's famous for, and if he finds a weakness in Ireland, he's going to have a crack on Saturday, and that could be the difference in a tight game. But if I put if they keep defending like they're defending, it won't be a tight game. I think Ireland will hurt them, and that's if Ireland did their homework. That's where I will be going next week, is into those outside channels, running those outside channels really aggressively, and I'm just surprised. It's a part, and we all know he's a world-class coach. There's no doubt about that. It's just such a big aspect of your game, your defense, is that it's, to me, looks very dated and soft, and it does invite the opposition to run at you. And I mean, they got cut to ribbons in Murrayfield, and Scotland. This Scottish team, to be fair, and I've got a lot of stick because I've criticised Scotland not enough, but I think this is one of the best Scottish teams for a long, long time.
Eddie,
and
is there any chance Schmidt playing chess to everybody else's checkers? Is he holding a little bit back for July? Why would I give Andy Farrell the tape?
No, I don't think so. I mean, July is a different bag of spanners altogether. You get back home, you circle the wagons, you look at what's coming down the pike, and you say, right, how do we get over this one? I don't think anyone in Test Rugby is putting stuff in the locker for
another day. Okay.
8 months' time. Maybe it's and I've no doubt we're already saying is that Joe, as a time, has looked like beyond the next game to the game after, because he thought that was done. But I don't see him at the moment holding stuff back because the lines are coming. I think that's way too far down the track for him. Okay,
interesting. We're pretty much done. Just to give a shout out, by the way, to Erin King. She's become the first ever Irish female player to win an individual award at the World Rugby Awards. She is the Women's 15s Breakthrough Player of the Year, 21 years old, from Naas. So she scored twice in that win against New Zealand in September. We have Peter Steph-Toy. He is the men's 15s Player of the Year for a second time. Obviously won it in 19. And then Ellie Kildune. If you watch any of the Women's Six Nations, you won't be surprised. She was phenomenal this year. 14 tries in 10 tests. She's the Women's 15s Player of the Year. Wallace Satiti got the nod in men's breakthrough. And then if you're interested, the Team of the Year, Will Jordan fullback, Cheslin Colby, Jesse Creel and Deolande centres. James Lowe got the nod as one of the two best wings in the world. Damien McKenzie got in at 10. Gibson Park 9, no surprises. Oxen Che, Malcolm Marks, Tyrrell Lomax, your front row. Eben Etzebeth and Tyg Byrne in the second row. And then Pablo Matera of Argentina, Steph Toy and Caelan Doris as your back row, Rory. Any scandals in there?
I think McKenzie it's not a scandal, but I think it reflects that maybe at the start, in the first year of a post-World Cup cycle, when everyone's rebuilding, that maybe we're not in the vintage era of outside halves, because he didn't even start some of New Zealand's games in November. There, he was very good against Ireland, but they're chopping and changing there, and they're really pining for Richie Mwanga. I see Scott Robertson's already kind of looking to try and change the rules so they can pick players in Japan based on Mwanga, basically. So
I love McKenzie, but I'm not sure he's a starter even for his own country.
No, but it just I do think it just reflects, like, Paul Ard has been in and out with South Africa. Crowley's new. Marcus Smith has been very good in November, but George Ford was England's 10 in the Six Nations. Like, Finn Russell maybe was in with a shout, but Scotland didn't play for Scotland in July. They went and played a load of tier 2 teams and didn't play a test series like Ireland did. So I just don't. I think you can argue against McKenzie, but it's very hard to come up with a realistic alternative for him at the same time, which maybe reflects. Even Jalibert's been binned by France, and they're playing Ramos at 10 at the moment. Dentamac missed a lot of the year. It's just there's no outstanding 10. And I'm not going to feed the beast by saying step forward Sam Prendergast, but the Ardy Sevilla is probably a bit harshly done by not to be in there. But Doris, certainly those Irish players all delivered in in a good year for Ireland and not a great year. But if Ireland, there's just a mark of where Ireland are, that they can have a good year, not a great year, and still have 4 players in the team of the year.
Yeah.
And Caelan Doris be voted the best non-South African player in the world as well, having been nominated alongside 3 Boks.
No, it's true. Fellas, that is us. Thank you so much. Our rugby coverage, our Autumn Nation Series coverage was, again, with thanks to Energia, sponsoring rugby at all levels, Irish rugby at all levels. Rory, thank you.
Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Eddie.
Game on Saturday. Eddie O'Sullivan, much appreciated. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Joe. Pleasure.